All right, welcome into Big Hitters Only. Breaking news about 10:25 a.m. this morning. News broke that UNC head coach Mack Brown was fired. He was fired by UNC and athletic director Bubba Cunningham after the loss to Boston College on Saturday. He'll coach out against NC State and will finish the season 6-5 right now, and have the game against State on Saturday. It is 11:55 a.m. We're here with Mike Hardison and Julian Council. Big news, breaking news. We were up late watching the basketball team, and I was kind of sleeping in, and this news broke. Mike, what were your initial thoughts? I know we've talked about this a couple times over this year.
Yeah. Initial thoughts. I mean, I give credit to Bubba Cunningham for making what's objectively, regardless if we knew it was coming, if we knew it was needed, a tough move, right? I think a lot of us were kind of thinking that this might get pushed another season just based upon not having things in place, based upon just program institutional inertia, if you will. And so I give a lot of credit to Bubba for making what is going to be kind of a polarizing call within certain UNC circles. I think most of us objectively outside of things kind of looked at it and were like, hey, it needs to happen. I can see one or two scenarios where team comes up fired up for him. There's something to play for, that type of thing. I could also see just complete apathy. So I will be very intrigued to see how that goes. So what about you, Julian?
Yeah, I really hope I don't see apathy on Saturday when you're playing your arch rival who's gone out there and kicked your ass the last 3 years, and Dave Doran was caught on camera calling y'all SOBs. So I really would hope that there would not be apathy because your coach just got fired on Tuesday. I mean, my immediate reaction is it's unfortunate that it had to come to this. I love Mack Brown, what he's done for Carolina football since he's returned, what he did even before, back from 88 to 97, and I hate that it had to come down to Bubba Cunningham making this decision. But I think it's important to know that Bubba Cunningham made this decision, and we did not think that he was going to be able to have the autonomy to make it. Now, of course, Mack probably had to force this on Bubba instead of just going out quietly, and that was the same situation when Steve Patterson was the AD at Texas when Mack was there, when he was effectively forced out there. I don't know how much he's been forced out of Carolina, but Bubba's decided that it's time to move on for the betterment of the program, looking at where things are at. I think Mack did a great job stabilizing recruiting, but we've seen so far recruiting has gone down. They just lost their top recruit on Friday to USC, which you're not really going to blame him, but still, that's not great. That's 4 decommits now. And you also just look at the fan support and the lack of attendance, the weight game. Crowd wasn't great. The supports all season long, especially since the loss of James Madison, has not been there. And those are two issues that they had with Larry Fedora. Were you going to get people in the stands in 2019? Were you able to recruit moving forward? And the answer, now looking at it heading into 2025, was going to be no for Mack Brown, like it was no for Larry Fedora at the end of the 2018 season.
Yeah. So how do we think this happened? I mean, what do you think? Mike and I were talking a little bit off the air about it. All right, so you lose to JMU and you kind of step down, and there's all this rumbling, and then you lose to Georgia Tech and Pitt, and then the Tylee Craft passing, and then a 3-game win streak against Virginia, Wake Forest, and FSU. All right, and then you lose to. You kind of get killed and embarrassed at Boston College. And, I don't think they scored offensive score until the fourth quarter. Looked really bad, lazy, lackadaisical effort. And then what's going on with Bubba right now? I see this as a power struggle of Mack trying to curry favor, trying to win out and keep the job. And I think Bubba's getting pressure probably on both sides to keep him and to fire him. And then ultimately, was it the Boston College game that was the last straw? Was it always going to happen regardless of what happened? If he lost, was it all dependent on the NC State game? Obviously not. But were they looking at what happened against BC and State? I'm curious, as I really love to be in that room. What happened? What do we think happened with Bubba's decision making and what it came down to? Do you all have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Mack last week talking about he was going to come back. We saw the reports from 247, from On3, Pete Nakos, and we also heard Mack himself go on SiriusXM, College Sports Nation, and say he was planning on coming back. There needed to be a response from the university and really from Bubba Cunningham And we didn't hear anything from them last week, which kind of lets you know right then and there the two parties were not on the same page. And I don't think Bubba is able to make this decision had Mack Brown not lost booster support. They're the ones who hired him in the first place after Larry was let go. Because the idea was to give Larry another opportunity, but they decided, actually, no, Mack Brown's here. Mack can come back. He can fix recruiting. People get excited. Let's bring back Mack 2.0 and let that happen. But I think after the way things played out against James Madison, on top of the other embarrassing losses that this team has suffered in the finishes to the 2022 season, where they're 9-1 and 9-5, which still is objectively hilarious that you can be in that position and then finish out 9-5. Then last year being 6-0 and losing to that Virginia team and in Georgia Tech the next week, they look back at all that had happened in the past and how things played against JMU, that 4-game losing streak, and they probably appreciated how Mack went about the Tylee Craft situation and how they turned things around. But then we all got a cold dose of reality on Saturday in Chestnut Hill, where they were unprepared and got thoroughly outcoached by Bill O'Brien, who has coached in college before at Penn State and at Alabama as an OC. But it's not like Bill O'Brien's going to build some monster there at BC. It's not like BC has the same kind of talent Carolina brings in and can bring in the future. And yet again, they got out tough, they got out physical, they got out coached, things that have become really a marker of the Mack Brown era here in Carolina. And that's when Bubba Cunningham, knowing your biggest rival coming up on Saturday against State, he had to make a decision, had to make a statement and tell him, hey, Mack, either you're gone or I got to let you go because we cannot continue to keep doing this.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like last week, like you said, like statements came out on that radio show from Mack, and then we're going to reference 24/7 Sports here, the Matt Zenitz report. We don't reference On 3 here, Julian, as an employee of 24/7 Sports. But yeah, so he was trying to like come out with like, I'm coming back. Like, I'm coming back. This is what's happening. Almost like speaking it into existence. Yeah, and then you said, it's interesting, UNC never said anything. But I don't know, do they have to say anything? I guess you would come out and say, yes, Mack is coming back. If that's what you kind of what Florida did, right?
You should probably say something like when we saw the reports coming out earlier this fall about Billy Napier and whether he was going to stay at Florida. Florida eventually said, he's coming back. Last week, the whole PR tour Mack went on. We didn't hear anything from Bubba Cunningham or from Lee Roberts, the new chancellor. We didn't hear any of that.
It makes me think there's like some succession type stuff going on behind the scenes.
Oh yeah,
right? Like Mack was coming out trying to posture. Like, he was basically trying to dare Bubba Cunningham to, like, go against him publicly. And I think, to a certain extent, I think with Boston College's help, with Bill O'Brien's help, he was able to kind of call Mack Brown's bluff, so to speak. And I like Mack Brown. Like, I think, I really do like the guy as a human being. I really want him to stay involved with the program itself. But, like, I think we all knew from early on this season it was time for a change. And I think we kind of had this fool's gold, which we typically do with Carolina, where we had a couple games go right, felt like, hey, maybe the team's kind of coming together. And then it's just that classic, what's become a prototypical November loss for Mack Brown, like Julian was saying, just kind of fell apart. Defense has been completely absent the last 6 years now. Like, just, what are we doing? So, I think it was, credit to Bubba Cunningham for making the call. I think Mack Brown was trying to kind of set up a narrative on his own the last couple of weeks. And I think he had back. I truly do believe if he had won at Boston College, beaten State, being competitive in a bowl game, he might be coming back next year because I think that allows him to call Bubba's bluff. So
yeah, I think also with that, because we talked about it like a week ago, I mean, with the way things were trending, how they had played. Now, granted, they beat the worst Florida State team we're ever going to see in our lifetimes. They beat Wake Forest barely, and they played terrible in that game. And they beat Virginia, who's also likely, we'll see if they win on Saturday against Virginia Tech, likely not going to be a bowl team. It's not like they were going out there and they were winning like against some really good teams, and you could really see the turnaround happening for this program. But yeah, had maybe he won out, then with the boosters, would they have supported it? I think that loss against Boston College and the whole PR tour he went on last week led the boosters to say, you know what, Bubba, go ahead. You have our blessing. Because I can't sit here and say that he has 100% control in the situation when we're hearing what we heard from Mack, the confusion after the JMU game where he was like, should I keep coaching or not? Like, if the AD is fully in control, like, you got to do something there about that situation and maybe not let it carry on, especially when there was already concern heading into the season. Where was this thing headed? Like, it was not heading the right direction back in August and early September before the JMU loss. And then after that, like, what exactly are you doing here with your athletic department when you're allowing stuff like that to go on? Because think about it. Mack Brown has fired himself, rehired himself, and extended himself in one season. And now here on Tuesday, November 26th, he's finally been fired by the guy who's actually supposed to be his boss in Bubba Canningham.
Yeah, and make this very clear. I mean, he was fired, and he is going to get his buyout. Like, I was talking to the people.
$2.8 million, which is absolutely nothing.
Yeah, but like, it just kind of ruins his legacy. To if he stepped down, you don't get the buyout, and we thank you for your time and all that good stuff. So that did not happen. So I wonder if he's going to be still around the program, like Mike referenced. I think what's interesting is every fan, I think, was ready to move on. I think he had almost like a 99% disapproval rating. Kind of incredible going on the message boards and Twitter. Like, no one wanted him to return, especially after the Boston College loss, which is crazy. So it's everybody knew it was time to move on. I mean, I think after last season would have been the time to do it. You got killed by NC State, go off with Drake May, and then now you kind of have this tarnished legacy, the 2024 season with that JMU loss, the 20-point Duke came back down 20 to beat UNC, the loss to Boston College. So he kind of tarnished his legacy with this season. Okay, so all right, Mack's out. We can get into some candidates. I want to also talk about Mack a little bit and what he did for the program as well. Anything else on his actual firing? Let me go through some texts here as well. I mean, I've been talking to so many people about it.
I think everybody agrees that it's the right decision for the program. And going into the year, I know we had the conversations about it, like, would Mack stay past 2024? And it was going to really come down to what kind of football program does North Carolina want to have. We talked about it last week, about all the changes with the House settlement and the rev share that's coming and likely changing the way the NIL is used in college athletics. I don't know how big NIL is going to be moving forward. I'm sure that there'll still be some sweeteners on top of the rev share that they have of players, but it's not going to likely take on the oversized role it's taking right now in recruiting, which still is illegal, but the NCAA has no willpower to fight anything. And the schools, of course, are the NCAA. People always forget that. The Carolina need to figure out what they want to do. Do they want to be serious in this now Big Two era with the college football playoff, where had crazy things not happen on Saturday? The ACC was looking at one bid, and that's going to be the reality possibly for the conference moving forward. Or do they actually want to button up, put the money into it, and be a big boy football program and try to carry an athletic department that is going to need football to be successful if they want to keep having all these Olympic sports and competing in field hockey and all these other things that certainly people care about, but that's not the moneymaker at the university. That's not the front door of the university like college football has become, and of course what college basketball is with that men's basketball program in Chapel Hill. What did they want to do? And what did they want to be? And now we have to find out.
Yeah. And in recruiting, the class is now ranked, I think, outside the top 70 in recruiting. They lost the top recruiter. 78th, I tweeted about it yesterday. They lost their top recruiter Friday, like Mike said. And so there's not really anything to hold on to other than Bryce Baker and some other guys. So this is going to move quickly. After the NC State game, they'll probably you have to bring in someone soon because signing day starts December 4th. You have a transfer portal window that opens, I think, December 9th and ends shortly after Christmas. You have 2 or 3 weeks for the transfer portal. So it's going to happen quickly. I wonder what the decision-making will be for Mack in coaching the bowl game. That's going to be a shitty bowl game. Like, talk about apathy. You're going to have so many people checked out on the team side and roster side. I mean, if it's anywhere, no one's in travel to that game. You might not have
how is that any different than last year?
I'm betting Lonnie Galloway is coaching the bowl game. That's my bet. I'll put $5 down on that right now.
My hope is Max stays.
To your point, Ross, like, I think one thing that's interesting here, and we've seen from Bubba before, that the coaching searches move fast if they haven't already identified the candidate. And I do wonder how much of this, and I will probably find out in a year, months from now, whatever. Do they have someone in mind? Do they have a candidate kind of identified right now? Because I do think, to your point, things move fast. Transfer portal is going to open. They need to have a new staff, new coach kind of put in place. So, is this the result not only of Boston College being the straw that broke the camel's back, but also a potential target that they have in mind that they've been back-channeling with that has kind of tentatively agreed for this? It's worth the conversation. I don't know if it has happened.
Let's get into some potential candidates. I will toss out one name that I've kind of heard that is interested, Dan Mullen, who is currently working for Julian, SEC. Hey, he was good at Florida and Mississippi State. I'm just saying he is. I think he'll be on the hot names. Why not, Julian? Retread? I
let's just
don't. I
hire.
don't.
I mean,
I'm
let's
not
just
super
hire
jacked
Mack Brown
about him.
again, right? Let's just hire
Yeah.
a younger Mack Brown, who went to ESPN, that's enjoying his broadcasting career, that's not been in college athletics with all the massive changes that have happened with the portal and NIL, and of course, health settlement, rep share coming up. Yeah, let's just hire that guy. Who also, why is he not at Florida anymore? Because he didn't want to
Yeah.
recruit. Like, that's the lifeblood of college athletics. And if you
Yeah,
don't, I mean, like, yeah, sure, North Carolina's going to be able to get guys, whatever, but they need to have a maniacal kind of dude who wants to recruit and understands that's
Love it.
how you win games. And that's why down in Gainesville, they said, get this guy the hell out of here. Kirby Smart, down in Athens, he figured things out at Georgia, got him running like Alabama under Saban, and recruited maniacally. That's not what Dan Mullen wanted to do. I'm just, quite frankly, I'm not interested in anyone who has no interest in recruiting college football. So I get
he's
it,
been
money, rep share. I don't want it. I'm
He's
out
been out of the
on
game
that.
since 2021. Look, this is not someone who I want. I've heard that name tossed around, so I thought I'd drop that in there. Julian, give me.
If they're not involved in coaching right now, if they're not currently coaching college football, they should not be a serious candidate.
Thank you.
Ooh.
Exactly.
All right, list off some names, Julian and Mike.
So,
John Summerall.
A, B, C, D, E, F. Like, it's John Summerall. That's the guy you're looking at. And right now, this is the best job on the market. It's the only Power 4 job available. And if a job like Kentucky, where John Summerall went to school, opens up, maybe Kentucky goes ahead of North Carolina because of the success that Mark Stoops had. But look at the new SEC. Oklahoma's come in. Yes, they've struggled, but they beat Alabama on Saturday night, as we all saw. Texas is in that league now. Like, Kentucky was always just going to be a team that was going to take the checks, take the losses in the new SEC. Like, is that what John Summerall wants to do? Maybe he gets more leeway going to this alma mater if things don't go well. But if you take the Kentucky job, you take like the Arkansas job and those two jobs in the SEC, you're getting fired in 4 to 5 years, but you're going to get rich. Is that what you want to do? Or do you want to come to Carolina and potentially be here for 10 years and actually win and make a ton of money and be in a conference where you actually have a chance as one of those? I mean, it's a top 5 program in the ACC, I think, moving forward, where Kentucky's never going to be a top 5 team in the SEC or even a top 8 in the SEC. So that would be the one job he'd be worried about if Summerall is their main target, who he should be. He's won at Troy. Back-to-back Sun Belt titles. He's gone. I mean, I saw Army on Saturday play Notre Dame, get that they're outclassed there. They're not beating this Tulane team. Tulane is going to win the American, and depending on how things play out with Boise State and UNLV in a Mountain West championship game, they may go to the playoffs, which complicates things, and which is why when we talked about it a week ago, that's why I was kind of like wondering, would Carolina make the decision now, or would they just delay it to see how you can hire coaches in this new expanded playoff era? And then with the House settlement, would it make more sense to wait? And we're going to see, because December 4th, as you mentioned, next Wednesday, signing day. Is John Summerall going to bail on his team? I don't think so. So December 7th is the championship game. The portal opens up on the 9th. If that's their main target, it's going to be interesting to see. Like, he brought all his guys from Troy to Tulane. Will he do that again? Bring those players to North Carolina, and be very active in the portal, which is what the Tar Heels already planned on doing. Will they have the NFL NIL coffers be able to do that if he's the head coach? But that's the guy I'm looking at. Glenn Schumann from Georgia be a name people are going to mention. But anybody like Arthur Smith, I'm good. I don't need to have a guy.
Why
who's
would
not
he
been in
leave the
college.
NFL anyway?
He's at Pittsburgh. He's with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Why the hell would you leave the Steelers, come to Chapel Hill? Like, that's insane to me.
Any other names? Is there any other action? I gotta look at some.
The one that everyone comes up on the message boards, but I don't think is realistic, is Schumann from Georgia. I mean, you're gonna see the names of different coordinators thrown out. Like I think the Penn State offensive coordinator has been a name that's tossed around.
Andy Koldalnicki.
It's been thrown around. But I would rather have a head coach. I think Summerall makes total sense. The big concern is Kentucky opening up, and so I do wonder if this precipitates conversations at Kentucky if Stoops is going to retire, like there's been whispers of, and does that potentially get the ball rolling there, knowing that this is your best option at Kentucky? I think you need to be. I mean, I imagine Bubba's having these conversations, right? Like, Chadwell's going to be thrown out, I think, but I don't think Chadwell, with the kind of issues in the background there, is going to be a serious candidate. I'm going to be very curious to see what happens. I am very worried that we're going to make a UNC hire. A UNC hire feels like a Dan Mullen or Arthur Smith, or kind of like a flashy name that doesn't make logistical sense, right?
Yeah, and this is not like, and Florida decided to stick with Billy Napier, which is seemingly working out with the wins against LSU and Ole Miss the last 2 weeks. I guess the Ole Miss one less so. You look at them historically, like Florida should always beat Ole Miss, but whatever. But you look at just the coaching landscape, like me saying, like Summerall, like that's the guy everyone's looking at. There's not another name out there that really excites you that much. I guess Garrett Riley down at Clemson would be somebody people would bring up. Will Stein at Oregon is someone. Lincoln Riley. If he made a bowl, so he's gonna at least stick around for another year. And he just flipped the quarterback to I think could be their starter next year at USC if they don't go to the portal route. There's just not a ton of great options in this cycle. And you got to hope a guy like Summerall would be interested, and I think he should be interested. But you look at next year, like does Auburn open up? I mean, does Ole Miss potentially open up? Florida, does that open up? I mean, Kentucky, if they don't do it this year, like there could be better jobs available next year. And I'm guessing that Tulane's going to be pretty good if he stays there. So he does not have to go and take this job right now. It's just, do you want to go take a top 5 ACC job, or do you want to wait to go take maybe a top 8 SEC job where maybe you have an opportunity to actually compete for the playoffs, which I think he could at an Auburn.
Yeah, and this is his first year at Tulane too. I mean, like leaving after 1 year, like he knows he's gonna get a big job at some point. So I could see him staying. All right, let me read through a list here, just from Inside Carolina board. John Summerall. This is Mac TTP and the experts, the insiders. Glenn Schulman, Jesse Minter, the DC for the Chargers. Again, I don't know if I'd leave the NFL for college.
He's a Harbaugh guy. Like that's not happening.
Kane Womack is the DC at Alabama. I think he was the head coach at South Alabama as recently as last season. Bob Chesney, head coach at James Madison. We know that name well. I would not mind something like that. Will Stein, very young coach at Oregon, the OC at Oregon, and Garrett Riley, the OC at Clemson. The Will Stein guy, I mean, Dan Lanning is like someone, that type of coach, kind of off the Nick Saban tree and the Kirby Smart tree, intense, recruiter, young. I mean, that's what you want. And so anybody who's touched those programs would be great.
You would imagine they'd bring some assistant coaches with them that would also be very good recruiters, right? There's that thought as well. I mean, it's going to be interesting. Garrett Riley, I do wonder about the synergies with, like, being in the Southeast already. You know, like, there is something to be said about that. Like, you've already recruited in South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Virginia. So you kind of know the area. And, like, as we know, the ball's going to have to get moving fast. So there's something to be said about not taking someone that isn't familiar with the pipelines in the region.
Yeah, but if you have someone who's a good recruiter, it's going to travel. And I understand, like, relationships in the Southeast are different. But, like, hell, if you were at any program, like Oregon, like Will Stein, I mean, he's been at Louisville. He's been at UTSA. So he knows he has connections at least in the Kentucky area and, like, down in Texas. But he understands with Dan Lanning that if you're going to get good players, you're coming down the Southeast regardless. So, like, all these schools, whether they're up in Minnesota or they're way, like, on the West Coast, they're all coming to the South to try and get players. So you're going to have those relationships probably built in. Like, if you're a recruiter, you can recruit regardless of where you're at. But I don't know if you got to be so stuck on get to be from the region or something like that. I just think go out there, get the best coach. Get a proven program builder. Yeah. And we can't say that about Garrett Riley. And we've already seen not to say that Garrett Riley can't do it, but we've seen his brother who inherited Bob Stoops' built Oklahoma program is not doing a great job building a program right now at USC. And there's been other examples of that where coaches get handed a job, they can't keep it going. I would like to get a defined program builder like a Bob Chesney, like you mentioned, who was at Holy Cross, then has been at JMU this year. That's a guy who did it in the FCS level and so far is carrying what Kurt Cignetti did. And really, hell, he had to start from zero, considering Cignetti brought some of these guys from Indiana and the way the portal works nowadays. That's what I would look for at Carolina, like just a damn football coach who can build, who can recruit, and is just that's focused on winning and not focused on all the other bull on the outside of it, which I think, unfortunately, people in Chapel are going to want. Because they only wanted Mack in the first place because he makes them feel great and like he's one of those buddy kind of people. They just need to get somebody who like is going to win football games. Because what are you more concerned about? A guy who can play golf with during the summer, or a guy who's going to actually go out there and win games and not lose as a double-digit point favorite multiple times?
I do think just generally help program pendulum swing. I think we go young. For whoever it is, they're going to pick a younger guy. I also think taking Chesney would be kind of hysterical because I imagine JMU fans would be pissed for losing 2 straight first-year coaches to bigger programs. So, something said about that.
Well, Cignetti was there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
He was with them in FCS because he was at Elon.
Is it 3 years?
No, I mean he was there for at least like
Okay.
5 or 6 because he was at Elon and he left to go to JMU, which is also in the CAA at the time, and they've only been FBS for like 2 years.
Got it. All right,
2 or 3 or whatever it is.
Chesney's coaching background's crazy. He's very much a New England, Northeastern guy. He was at Slough, Virginia in the New England Football Conference. I don't even know where that is.
Salve Regina is in it's in Newport, Rhode Island.
Yeah, what? That's is that Division 3 or even?
Dude.
Yeah, I can't believe you know that, Julian. And he was in Assumption.
I lived in West Hartford, Connecticut, and I used to be on an app called Tinder, and there's a lot of girls who had went to Salve Regina. So that's how I know it's in Newport.
I've never heard of that. So he was there. He built that program up. He was at Assumption, which is in the Northeast 10 Conference, which I've never heard of. And
It's in
then Holy
Pennsylvania.
Cross. I mean, he's been a head coach since like his 20s, it seems.
Okay.
And James Madison is his 4th stop. He has him 8-3. I mean, obviously, yeah, swing for the fences, John Summerall, but then you got to have some backup options. You know, Bob Chesney wouldn't be the worst. It's going to be very interesting. I mean, these coaching searches are fun. This is when you're on Inside Carolina, you're refreshing flight tracker, all this good stuff. It's an exciting time. You know,
who do they keep on staff?
Yeah, I mentioned that. I mean, I think Galloway would be a guy. If you're going to keep anyone, you keep him. I feel like he's done a really good job recruiting wide receivers, recruiting in North Carolina. I mean, he was a guy. But that's probably it, right?
Yeah, I think he's the only one. Hal, we know there's a certain linebacker coach that had Jay Bateman had his way, wouldn't still be here in Chapel Hill, but Mack was not going to let that happen. So I'm guessing he's likely. I would think the whole whatever defensive staff, they can all go because Summerall is already a defensive guy. He'll bring in his people. He's not going to bring everybody from Tulane. He'll bring in people that he worked with possibly at Ole Miss, at Kentucky, and some of the other stops that he's been on along the road. So if that's the choice, but I would think that Galloway with his connections to hell, guys. I mean, Kendra Harrison. I know he's going to likely commit to Oregon, but that's still going to be a guy they're going to go after. His connections to him and just being able to recruit receivers, just talent in this state, and being from the state. I think that makes sense.
Kendra may can make it to Oregon, but we've got a whole year here with him. Basketball.
Yeah. I'm not worried about all that. And then I don't know, like Monachino's an interesting one.
Yeah,
because I do think they've played a lot better. He has that NFL experience, and maybe that's somebody that's worth a look at, depending on who. If it's Summerall, of course, but whoever it is, if they have somebody that they like as a defensive line coach, they can convince to come here. We'll see. But yeah, like Collins, he's gone, obviously. And you have to wonder too, because like Jeff Collins coming here, you have to wonder like what were his options truly this offseason? Because he had to have known that this likely was not going to be a long-term thing in Chapel Hill. And then like Chip Lindsey, he'll be gone. And Chip Lindsey was the coach at Troy before Summerall and couldn't win there. And Summerall won 2 championships in his only 2 years. Just to tell you how good of a coach that he is.
Yeah, Chip Lindsey hasn't had the greatest UNC tenure. I mean, it is kind of interesting reading these names like Freddie Kitchens, but you got to clean. I want the house clean. It's hard and it's tough, but you got to get rid of some of the mentality that's with some of these with the program, whether it's on the coaches or not. I mean, even back into some of the culture, some of the admin staff. It just like it's got to be a complete whitewash of coaches there. But all right, let's get into this. I mean, anything else? Let's get into kind of Mack obit here. One thing that's tough, like I'm just kind of thinking about it, like it does suck because it's not just Mack. Mack's gonna be fine. He's got 3 houses in North Carolina. He's got a beach house on Figure 8, a mountain house in Linville, and a massive house in Chapel Hill. He's gonna be fine. But it does suck for people like Patrick Sudis. Like he's got young kids, bought a house. I mean, I know him. I'm not sure how much he likes me based on the kind of stuff I tweet, but I know Patrick Sudis. I mean, it's young family. Like there's a lot of like young people that are going to have to move now and find new jobs and uproot their family and pull kids out of school and stuff. So that's the dark side of these coaching jobs. You have a lot of staffers that are making $30K, 10-month salaries that are going to have to try to find a new job now. So it does uproot 50, 60 people when one person gets fired. That's the dark side of college coaching. But Mack Brown, all right. I think he raised the floor of UNC football. He brought in tons of money into the program. I think he was a bridge coach. I've heard some Joe Biden comparisons already on text. He was a bridge coach that did his job but stayed too long. And I think he did a lot of good in improving the infrastructure, both in terms of facilities and fundraising and all this stuff and then look, we had some great times with Drake May and Sam Howell. I know Julian had some great times in Keaton Stadium and following this team around. So we do thank Mac. I think he did a really good job for what was asked. He stayed a year or two too long, and we knew this was going to happen. This was going to happen, whether it's going to be ugly. It was going to be ugly probably regardless of what happened, and it seems like it was relatively ugly with the power struggle up top. But I think you have to mention the good Mack Brown did for the UNC football program.
Yeah, I mean, I love Mack Brown. I remember in 2015 when I was working up at ESPN Radio in Bristol, Connecticut. It was after, I think, the Wake game, whenever they blew the hell out of somebody. And we're looking at one of the better teams we've ever seen in Carolina football history, and one of the most fun seasons I've ever had, and we've all had. And I saw him and Mark May in the cafeteria. I went up to Mac to go talk to him, just to introduce myself and just say, like, hey, look at this Tar Heel team. Sat there and talked to me for 10 minutes. Anyone who's ever talked to Mack Brown, met him, knows that, like, that guy really invests in people and makes you feel like $1 million. And I've always appreciated interaction. I've appreciated everything he's done for the university. Because I remember hearing the stories of what he was able to do in Chapel Hill back when he was there the first time around, and having the 10-2 season in 96 and in 97, having game day, the only time we've had game day in Chapel Hill, and decision day, which obviously didn't go the Heels' way, but to have back-to-back 10-win seasons, I mean, when I was having my formative years and watching John Bunting football, I didn't even know that was possible in Chapel Hill. So for Matt to come back, that first game against South Carolina here in Charlotte, I was there covering the game. I mean, awesome comeback to win that game. That night, Saturday night, the next week against Miami, just buzzing, leaving that game at, like, driving back to Charlotte, getting home at 2 a.m. And just from that experience and everything. I mean, the Miami game last year, just all the games that, like, he has had the fun times, the Miami game on the road. And, yeah, there's the tough times, like Virginia and Georgia Tech and JMU and some of the embarrassing moments. But he made it fun. And he shows that what North Carolina can be capable of as far as recruiting. Now, they didn't develop those players, but Carolina can be a team that can be in the top 25 perennially. I do believe that. I'm not going to sit here and say it's a sleeping giant that's going to break down and be a top 15 program moving forward, but they should be a consistent top 25 team. Like, this is a fan base that, when given a reason, they will invest. They invested especially when they feel like the university cares, they invest. When they brought back Mac, people were ready to do it again, and they were invested. When they brought in Butch Davis, they felt like the university cared. People were there. I wish that they would be there through thick and thin, but that's just not the way things are ever going to be in Chapel Hill when it comes to this football program. I'm appreciative of him. I hate that it's ended this way. I hope he goes out on top against NC State. I hope that he's willing to put his pride aside and to coach the bowl game and to help whoever the next coach is transition and potentially keep some of these players like a Bryce Baker, who is set to sign next Wednesday. But looking at it, I know Georgia's looking to flip a quarterback. I know that A&M's looking to get a quarterback. He's a top 150 guy. So he may not be coming to Chapel Hill. We'll see how that works out. I'm appreciative of Mack Brown. I'll forever be grateful for what he did for the program and for the fun times I've had over the last 6 seasons. And it was time. And I don't think anyone can really argue that. And last year, at the end of the last season, probably was time. But certainly after everything that's played out this year, this had to happen.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, my dog's named after Mack Brown, right? Like, I love the guy. Like, he was a breath of fresh air at a time we really needed him to be. I think it says, to your point, Ross, about raising the floor of Carolina football, it says something that he's getting fired after what will be a 6-6 or a 7-5 regular season, right? Like, I mean, think about when Fedora left, vice where we're at now, and moving on from a head coach. And those comparisons aren't perfect because there's some kind of extenuating circumstances. Age is a big one. Like you mentioned, 2024 is a banner year for old white dudes that were successful in the early 2000s, not knowing when to call it quits. Look, there were some high highs and there were some low lows here. I think one big thing with Mack Brown that was just a killer for him was not being able to beat State the last couple seasons. I do give him a ton of credit because he did bring in Sam Howell. He brought in Drake May. Like, we're going to have mentions of North Carolina on Sundays in NFL games because of Drake May, because of Josh Downs, because of Javonte Williams for years to come, right? And that's good publicity for the program. That keeps us kind of top of mind, even in a era where the ACC is fading, where there's like, kind of questions about the future of our conference, that type of thing. It keeps Carolina in the conversation. And there's really something to be said about that. It just seems like to me the big issue with Mack Brown was just never being able to take that next step. I think we all had, after the first couple of seasons, we had high hopes that we were going to be able to kind of make that next step forward. And when you just kind of instead take a step back, it kind of amplifies how big a deal that is to the fan base. And so, I think if Mack Brown had come in, we were just kind of trudging along and get 6-6, 7-5, kind of consistently, with early losses and kind of just a standard, program throughout the year as opposed to peaking early and then falling off a cliff towards the end of the season. There's probably a different feeling about his tenure here. It's the thing that killed Mack Brown was the fast starts and the really difficult late Octobers and Novembers, in my opinion. So, love the guy. I love, him being around the program. I really hope that they're able to patch up what is undoubtedly a very tense and not fun situation right now with him, so that he can still be involved with the program and be an ambassador for it. But I will be thankful for the Drake May time, some of the Drake May games that we got to see. I mean, I've watched these games with both of you. I've been able to see some incredible wins with both of you. I've also seen some pretty bad losses with both of you over this tenure. So it's hot and cold. It's a mix. I'm overall appreciative for him, but definitely time to move on.
Yeah, and one last thing too, for me, as far as like, yeah, because I know you said earlier, Ross, like this is tarnish his legacy. I don't think so. I don't think it should. I mean, we'll find out more information. But like Carolina fans should be appreciative of Mack because like this was a complete dumpster fire situation that he stepped into, and like he took this team to an Orange Bowl and an ACC championship. Like those things just don't happen. This program still has not won an ACC title since 1980. So I just don't think you can look at some of those losses, albeit as tough as they were, and think like that his legacy has been tarnished at all by like this season and maybe how things are being how he's going to go about things maybe moving forward, unless he like goes like a complete Rashad McCants turn, which I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't really see that happening with Mack Brown. Like I think he's been clearly one of, if not the best coach that we have ever had in Chapel Hill, and he should be celebrated in that way. And I love that now on Saturday it's not just celebrating the senior class who has had some high moments, but also has let us down plenty of times. It's us about celebrating Mack Brown and what he's achieved in Chapel Hill, and that can be the focus instead of, oh man, is Mack going to go away? Now it can be like, let's just go beat that team from state that everyone's sick of losing to and who's not had a great season, and go finish it off and not let them go to a bowl. Like Mack started off his career back here in Chapel Hill back in 2019 by sending state packing at 5-7. Let's end his career here in Chapel Hill by sending state packing at 5-7 as well.
If Mack Brown's going down, take Dave Doran with him.
Yeah, really well said, guys. I'd be interested to see how they honor him on Saturday. Is it going to be some big pregame thing? Who knows? Because it will be his last game coaching in Keene Stadium. I don't think it's going to be a Mack 3.0 or even a Mack 4.0. But I do think, just to close it up, like I think losing the state was a big part of this. I think not being able to win a big game is a big part of kind of how I remember Mack. Like, what's the biggest win? Miami. He never could.
That was a primetime game. I mean, it's top 15 primetime game,
yeah,
man. And there was,
but like never getting over the hump.
Win.
Yeah, I'm saying that was his biggest win, but never getting over the hump in a bowl game, or when it was a top 20 game. Like I don't remember like a big win for Mack Brown. And then like just the losses, the unexcusable losses to Virginia, to Georgia. Like I think he got killed by Georgia Tech a bunch. Boston College is another example of kind of what that was. But yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the positives outweigh the negatives during the Mack Brown era, and ramped up recruiting. It was kind of funny there, Julian. Got recruiting but couldn't develop them. I mean, we're still waiting for Zach Rice to play.
Same thing happened at Texas, by the way.
Yeah, so
he's a recruiter, not a developer.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting, and we'll keep you updated here. This is an exciting time. We hopefully watched the basketball podcast last night. That was really fun with Connor and Spencer. I think we're gonna try to do one again tonight, but that was an incredible game. So make sure make sure you're subscribing, liking, following. Big Hitters Only. We appreciate Julian's time and Mike's time here. Are you all gonna be in the building on Saturday?
I'll be there on Saturday. Yes.
Spend Thanksgiving with the in-laws, so I will be. I'll be driving probably back up. So
Julian, come to the bell tower. Tailgate the bell tower.
Yeah, actually, this one dude I met in Germany, he was a listener of the Panthers pod. He's over here right now because he said he's going to go to the state game and he's going to the Panthers game on Sunday. I was like, hey, let me show you around Chapel Hill. So maybe I have to do that.
Nice.
So
awesome. All right, guys, Mack Brown fired. Appreciate y'all listening. Rate, review, subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time. Appreciate it.